to order. The Board of Education acknowledges that we're on the traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. We'd like to thank them for the privilege of living on their land and the gift of working with their children. I just want to let everyone know that, just as a reminder, our students we're holding in the center tonight. I hope that we have more meetings with our students in the center as representation by the beautiful box. And this evening, as opposed to just having questions randomly fired up and people firing up their hands, we're going to pass around a talking stick this evening so that everyone has an opportunity to have their voice heard. If you have no comments or questions, please feel free to just pass the talking stick along so that everyone gets a chance to speak this evening. Can I please get a motion for an adoption of the agenda to begin? Yes, Trustee Olginger. And someone to second that motion? Trustee Leslie. All in favor? And education, celebrating the 2024-2025 school year multimedia presentation. Craig Srochin, Manager of Communications, and I must say I'm very excited about this presentation.
Okay, Josh and I were working on this.
Thank you.
Maybe we can get this here quickly. Enter full frame mode. Okay, hold on. Josh, any?
Is it an extension? Do you have to try it?
I think it's supposed to be an extension. Are we? Hold on a second. We did come up beforehand and I practiced.
Brushed it up, so
That should work. There
Yes.
you go. We're not worried.
there it is.
It is.
Where's the?
Gonna come.
We had it figured out.
Look at those maps.
Right? They're pretty. This feels so tense.
Oh, yes.
You thought you were ready.
The canoe. How many of us have just depended on Joshua?
If I stand there, I'm
Oh,
gonna.
Josh.
Yeah.
To Joshua all the time. But it's early morning, late at night, so thank you. Yeah, so it's really an honor to be here. Gaelic Essa, I'm Craig Sorokin, the communications manager for the school district here. I see myself as the district storyteller, so I get to go out. This is the great part of my job, the positive side of my job when I'm out in community, capturing our student stories, our staff stories, stories about our schools, focusing, trying to tie things in more on student learning, tying things to the strategic plan. You might see a little less sports in my reels this year. I think the first couple of years I had a lot of sports stuff, so a little less of that this year, trying to do some different stories. Actually even have some more great stories to come this year. So I just want to say it's really an honor to be here. We're going to get going. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're on Comox First Nations territory. And we talked a little bit about personalizing these acknowledgements. And Joe spoke this morning a bit about going down to what we call now Mackleang Park. And it's somewhere I go about 3 or 4 times a week, take my dog down there. And I don't want to spoil it because it's like not very busy down there, but it is a special place. There's old growth trees, there's the creek they've been restoring down there. And of course, there's the middens, which I had the fortunate experience to learn about from Jesse Moran when he was talking to teachers a couple years ago about the land, educating our staff about the land. And that's something that's really been fortunate in my job over the last few years, is how much I've been able to learn on the job. I'm sure all of you have, as we get out into the community and we learn about the real history of this territory, not just the colonial one. So we'll get into the fun stuff now. First day of school, I went into Lake Trail. What stuck out to me? baggy pants are back and skinny jeans are out. But yeah, it's kind of a fun day. I kind of usually like to visit a school or two. These kids are stoked to see each other. Yeah, so I just always try and get out to a couple schools on the first day just to get the vibe. I got over to Baysville too then. Right off the bat, we have Consent Week. It's the third or fourth year we've been doing it now. It's really great to see the traction over the last few years as schools start to not just say Consent Week, but to kind of live it out and to act it out. On the left, you'll see Highland had their counselors and some of their teachers out with some information, educating students in a fun way about consent. On the right, there's a consent wheel from Isfeld. Once again, teachers, staff using kind of new creative ways to kind of teach our students about consent. And it's a really important topic that I know our board has spearheaded, and I think it's really important to teach our students about this as they grow up and enter society. So the start of school year is pretty busy, as we all know, and we've got another week that the board has proclaimed, Truth and Reconciliation Week, and it really has taken off the last few years. I was invited to the Village Workshop at Isfeld. This is with students from around the district who are taking the English First Peoples course. And so I got a taste of the workshop before staff did here. I know a lot of our kind of staff and trustees and senior leaders took part in this workshop. So yeah, it was just another example of our schools really picking up and rolling with this week. Today's assembly that they were having was really nice to attend. Just a few more images from that week. These are from Royston and Miracle Beach. Early October, I got to Highland. They were hosting the North Island cross-country track meet, and cross-country running is actually the fastest growing sport in the district. It's really taken off. You get kids from all ages. They're doing it in elementary school, middle school, high school. So that was really cool to see. A lot of parents out with their kids and a lot of kids running that day. It's just in the northeast woods over there. This is one of the cooler assignments all year. I got the call to come out to Airport's pumpkin carving contest. And the pack out there had organized this. And if you look at the pumpkins, they were actually incredible. Really awesome work. And the kids were super proud to show me all their pumpkins. And it's just another example. Some of my days are better than others. Once we get into November, of course, Remembrance Day is a pretty good reminder for me, especially when I go into schools, just how many people in the community are involved in the armed forces and Air Force base in the community. Lieutenant Colonel Luke Coates was there. He's the guy speaking. He signed up. I think he first got into cadets at 17, so he'd been a long time in the Air Force, and I think he's done over 150 jumps, many rescue missions. He talked a little bit about his experiences and shared that with our students. But yeah, you can see just in the crowd there's people wearing their paratrooper outfits and different Canadian Forces regalia. Really, there's the Ignite Summit followed right after that in early November. It was at the Philberg Center. They had Jesse Everson warmed the crowd up with a really good land acknowledgement words for the students. Serena Allison, she also spoke to the crowd. She helped organize this, one of our lead teachers. And yeah, it was really great to see so many students involved passionately talking about climate change. The last few years, they've taken some of their ideas out of this conference, kind of moved them forward into projects and communities. So it was great to see this event take off again over the last couple of years. Now the Band and Choir Fest. This is Mansfield's choir. Jennifer Riley's leading, and she's the lead teacher who organizes this event each year. And I know our trustees, chair, often come out and see that event. It's one of my favorite events also to attend. It's 2 days. Our students are super talented, but also the process there where they're getting feedback from the adjudicator. So they're learning in live time, but they're also singing at the same time. They're playing their instruments. It's a really cool event. 31 years in the district, so it's been going a long time, and it seems to have a lot of support in the community. A lot of people from the public come out and watch it, and yeah, I really look forward to next year's. Another highlight this year was Susan Aglukart. She came in and played at Vanier and Isfeld. I know people who were there were probably blown away. Her message, her voice. I was only able to record for short segments, so this little clip coming up here is pretty short, but a little sound here. Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing for our students to be able to have her come perform and share her stories and her message. Right after that, North Island Drama Fest was hosted by Vanier. And a whole bunch of kids, I think a couple hundred kids from around the island, came, learned in workshops, took part in all sorts of fun games. At night they had performances. And right when I walked in, they were having a dance party. I'm not sure what I walked in, but it was a little flavor of my day that day. Anyways, I got out of there pretty quick. Careers Week followed. Careers Week this year, I know our careers team was working with the province on this, and wow, did they step it up. And what's really great about this week and these careers days is the interaction between our businesses and different organizations and our students. You know, there's probably about 40 different businesses and organizations at this school alone. There's different schools that had different events and days and activities that were happening. I think our careers team does an incredible job setting up our students. I get invited out to a lot of careers events, and they're all good. And a lot of them, I'm thinking back that we did not do this when I was in school. These types of opportunities were not available in the 90s when I went to school. And it's really great to see this happening in our community, and that I know a lot of our students go right into jobs out of our careers department program. I have a tenant, she lives in my house, she's 20, she's a Red Seal plumber, and she's one of our Vanier students. So we're setting people up to succeed right out of these programs, which is really great to see. Christmas time, or holiday season, sorry. Everybody deserves a smile. What an incredible initiative. You see Madame Chantel Stefan on the right there. She leads this project every year with her club, leadership club down at Takeo Puntledge Park. And 21 schools this year handed over 1,600 care packages, thousands of cookies, over 2,000 bags prepared. I know a lot of our trustees go down and pack some bags. I've gone every year, pack a few bags and soak it all in. I think this is just a really great initiative that our teachers leads organically, and it's spread throughout the community. And it's made a big difference out there in people's lives in the holiday season, which can be pretty hard on people. Another tough assignment, the Repas du Temps de Fête, spelled French 9. But it's a celebration of French-Canadian culture that Isfeld hosts. And they have French students from around the district come. They served over 600 meals this year. So that's a really impressive amount of food to serve up to people. And they did a great job. Lots of smiles on people's faces. The tortilla was awesome. Lots of great food. So yeah, a great kind of immersive learning experience for our students in the lead up to the holidays. There's all sorts of fun happening. The Winter Feast at Lake Trail, I've gone the last few years. It's another really fun event. They were doing all sorts of awesome games in the lead up. Thrifties donates a whole bunch of food. Got our some of our teachers. We've got Ginny there. Yeah, and they feed the whole school a nice turkey dinner for lunch every year, and it's really good. So hats off to them. And of course, the holiday concert season, which is really busy. And I have to say, I'm always impressed at the performances, the choreography that is involved with setting up these shows. I'm not a huge Christmas guy, but like I go in there and I can soak it up and really enjoy it. So every year it's a really busy time at our schools, and I know it's probably not an easy time for our teachers when they're dealing with kids as they're getting ready for the holidays. So there we go. Townie Invitational every January. That was right before I got invited out to Quaniche for a coding demo. And in the middle there, you see Michaela. And on the left, she's a grade 12 student from Vanier. And she is one of our, she's a leader when it comes to like the robotics team. She's a real leader when it comes to being a mentor with younger female students in the world of coding. So I made a little video, just a small snippet of what she was doing with our students that day.
Hi, so I'm Michaela. I am a grade 12 at GP Vanier, and I am in the Vex Robotics Club. And I kind of had a love of robotics for a long time. I was in the engine program, and then recently I started doing more outreach with the girls in STEM, and I work at NIC doing the NIC Youth Academy, doing girls robotics camps and boys robotics camps. And NIC was nice enough to let me borrow their kits to actually run my own camps free of charge for kids who might not be able to, and just have like good experience for all the girls in STEM. And I was running it for grades 6 and 7. And right now they're working on our first little build, learning a bit about the engineering design process. And yeah, they're doing a lot of building, coded, having a lot of fun, problem solving with everything.
Right?
Does her mom know?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had consent to do that too. Right after that, the wrestling invitational at Highland. So I went to this. It was on a Saturday, and I walked in, didn't know what to expect. Hundreds of people there. It's the first time in a long time that we've had a wrestling event in the Valley. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but our wrestling team is really good. It's much to the thanks to the three gentlemen in the middle there. So on the right is Ben Stahara. He was named BC Wrestling Coach of the Year. He obviously must be good because we keep on winning tons of events. I think this weekend we won 11 first place medals. It's a full mix of girls and boys. We have girls who've been provincial champions. So yeah, it's a really cool event. I look forward to going to next year's event, and I'm sure we'll read more about our wrestling team success next year. This is another day. It was a random day. I was in it, and at Highland, it's a good example of every day there's something interesting happening in our schools, and it's hard for me to tap into it, but it happens all the time when I go into schools and someone's like, "Hey, you coming down to the drum circle?" Sure. I wasn't, but I am now. And Dave Dawson, who's one of our ISWs, awesome guy. He was down there, and he was about to lead a bunch of students through a drum circle. So I sat in for a bit and got to soak it in. And here's a little tidbit from that. Yeah, so it's a pretty good example of some of the decolonizing, indigenizing work happening in our schools at the ground level that I wasn't even aware of until I walked into it. So I thought I would share that. District Musical this year was hosted by Isfeld. That's the first time in a while. I don't know who got out there this year, but it was a really good show. Once called a mattress, upon a mattress. Sorry, it's an adaptation of The Princess and the Pea. 4 sold out shows again. So every year shows sell out. I know this year there was a little uncertainty, and then boom, all the tickets sold as usual, Comox Valley style, last minute. So if you're waiting late next year, maybe act ahead because it's probably going to sell out. I think Vanier is hosting it again. And Skills Canada. We actually, I just got word that we had one of our students who got silver. I haven't put it in this slideshow, but Skills Canada event is another great event. It's hosted up in Campbell River the last couple of years. We hosted it 3 years ago. But it's a great example of kind of the teamwork, the collaboration, the camaraderie of our students working together. Those 4 guys on the left, that's the Spaghetti Bridge champs for the whole event that day. So they're really stoked that their Spaghetti Bridge held up. The other ones all broke. And one of our woodwork students, really incredible work they're doing at the senior grades. Once you get into the secondary contests, there's really fine craftsmanship happening. And of course, on the right, there's some fun stuff with younger students. I think it's a team from Royston with their robots, which they code and program. They've got preset challenges. Those robots you'll see in a more evolved way at the robotics competitions. March. Pictures from the Hornby Quebec Exchange. So these are when they hosted students from Quebec. Sounded like they had an awesome time because when they were out on the water, they saw a pod of 6 orcas. So talk about like land-based learning for these students along with their peers from Quebec, right? They're out on the water. It's March, a beautiful sunny day, and this pod of orcas comes out. So yeah, it sounded like they had an incredible exchange. They did go back in May to Quebec City. Photos and highlights are on the website, but it seems like a real once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for students, everyone involved, probably even staff, a really special time. The district spelling bee. Brooklyn every year, or that I've been here, I say every year, sorry, has hosted this event. Dr. Collier, our associate superintendent, was a VIP judge this year. And it's one of these rooms I walk into, and there's a whole lot of kids smarter than me. And that's okay. It's really awesome to see how smart these kids are. As the rounds get harder, the words get more and more challenging. And I know that little guy in the middle, I don't know who he is. I think he came second, but he's came in the top 2 the last 2 years. But yeah, it's such a fun event to watch. It's packed with proud parents cheering their kids on. There's also other students in the gym, and they're also writing the words down. So they're learning while they're watching. It's a really fun event. And I know Sarah Hesselgrave, one of our retired teachers, she comes back and she's been helping host this event. That's how much fun she has with it each year. I can't wait to get back next year. I made a visit to the Miracle Beach Salad Bar, and that video on the right, people love food in the Comox Valley, as we know, and they're very passionate about it. And it's probably, I think it was our most watched video of the year. It was just me walking folks through the salad bar at Miracle Beach. And it's a great example of our Feeding Futures funding in action in the school. And they're getting a lot of meals, really good, high quality meals into kids' mouths and stomachs. And in the middle there, the classes that don't get the full meal, they get a delicious snack platter delivered to their classes. Each class, this day it was hand delivered by Principal Darnell. And the kids were just running to, in an orderly fashion when allowed, to get to the food. And it was interesting when I asked 2 different classes what they liked. The one class emphatically said cheese, and the other one said broccoli. Right? So this is a photo from Reading Links, another awesome competition that our students are involved with, supported by our team of teacher librarians that you see on the left. It's an elementary grade competition. and they're given a bunch of books to read. They can read one of the books or they can each read a book, but they got to work together on answering the questions. And so it's really great to see the kids shooting different ideas off each other, collaborating. And then on the right are Vancouver Island Public Librarians who host the event, who ask questions about the books. And in the middle, you'll see the winning team from Bay Nides, so which is a really cool. I think it's pretty cool considering they're not in class as much, and so it's great to see them working together like that. This is French rapper Missy. She visited Nicole Mark Isfeld and Nicole Rob Road. Actually had students up jumping and singing at Isfeld, which I know for secondary students probably isn't super easy to get them to do. And so it was great to see them actually into that. And she shared her stories and personal stories and message with our students. All right, this day stands out for me in the year. I know some of you were there. I'm sure it was really special for you, but we met up to name and witness. I was invited to witness, thankfully, the naming of our 2 new district canoes, Stixum and Spilas, Sun and Moon. I couldn't film this event, but I was allowed to take pictures before and after. It was a really special event. There was a group of hereditary chiefs. There was people from Comox First Nation. There's the traditional chief of Pentlich Nation. Yeah, it was a very powerful event. And, those canoes are now actually in the water. They're being used by our students. And I feel really fortunate to have been able to witness that day. I got some really nice photos. And then there's Joe with his broken foot. He hobbled around, and but yeah, it was a really special day for our district, and I personally can't wait to get out and capture some pictures of our students on the canoes, but I've been waiting until the appropriate time to do that. In May, we hosted the first enduro mountain bike race in the district. It was pretty great. I mean, I think there was 130 riders. And what made this event really special was the parent volunteers, mostly out of Cumberland, who came together and helped make that event possible. Yeah, there's a lot of volunteers along the course. It took quite a lot of work to map out the trail. If you've been up on that trail network, they had first aid stations. So they did everything they needed to do to get Associate Superintendent Dixon to agree to sign the liability waivers and host the event. And I can happily report that the event was super successful. And I know how important mountain biking is to our community, because when I post anything about mountain biking, it gets hundreds of likes. And there's a lot of our people in our schools, a lot of our parents, a lot of our students who are into mountain biking. So it's great to see our district get behind that. And I'm sure it'll happen again next year. Hacker Gal Day. What a great event. 35 girls from across 6 elementary schools came together. They're their coding clubs from their schools. They work with their teacher librarians, learning coding skills. They use a program called Scratch. It's all stuff way above my head. And Hacker Gal is a national organization that encourages breaking down gender bias in coding. As you guys probably know, I lived in Victoria for a while. The tech companies, especially a few years ago, was you see a group of 10 guys, that's the tech company out for lunch. But I think those barriers are starting to get broken. A lot more girls and women in coding, and this is a great program that you can see is streamed nationwide with different groups who come together to tackle the same challenges and questions and come up with solutions. So really great to have Hacker Gal and their founder, second to the right there, Lucy Ho, actually visited us this year for the national broadcast. So, yeah, there's a great photo of our tech team and our tech teachers who, Kara Dawson and her team, who were there that day. It was just a really special event to be able to document. Another great event, and we learned about it in the last meeting, so I didn't put too many photos of this event. Second annual special track meet. 125 students this year, 50 more than last year. Tons of fun games, really inclusive event. What was really impressive is the huge amount of volunteers who came out to support students and families that day. I've got a video I'm working on. We're going to be putting out soon on the district channels about this. But I know it's something we should be proud of as a district to host. We've got inclusion as a pillar here, and this event really is boosting kids up. Probably will be growing next year again, but hats off to the organizers of this awesome event. Indigenous Rugby Day. This time of year gets really busy for me. It seems like every day I'm going to another event or activity. Rugby Day is the 4th annual day. Donna Mitchell, Comox First Nation, Elder, opened up the event with some beautiful words. And what stands out to me on this day is a few things. The participation rate. 99.9% of the kids were there playing the games, having fun. See, I don't know if you guys, like a PE class, there's usually about 10 kids standing on the side, not taking part at least, right? Everyone was playing rugby. Everyone was having fun. Over the last, 4 years that I think is the 3rd year that I've attended, first they were bringing coaches up from UVic because we didn't have enough coaches in the Valley. But this year, all of the coaches were from the Comox Valley, and a lot of them were former students, a lot of people who play rugby here locally. So it kind of shows you how popular that sport has become in the Valley, right? We know that. June, a photo from our student voice group that was in here recently. But getting back to rugby, provincial champions, Vanier. So just last weekend, the girls won the AAA championships. And yesterday I was out at the grocery store, and the cashier was one of our students, and she's wearing her championship t-shirt. So I gave her a high five and said, "We're proud of you from the board office." But it means a lot to these students. Rugby is another one of those sports that we know is growing really quickly in the Valley. And yeah, it's really cool to see our girls win a provincial championships. The guys came second in the 7s, but to get gold and first place in the 15s is a really big deal that these girls should be proud of. Almost at the end here. Last week, Joe asked me to take a photo of the student council, Student Voice Council. They've been meeting once a month throughout the year, and what a great group of students. And they shared lots of ideas with their leaders, with Jeremy and Joe and other leaders last week. But I wasn't able to get a photo without anyone making hand gestures. That is almost impossible. So yeah, sorry about that, Joe. Grad season, here we are at the very end. We had 2 grads. We had Nides, we had Highland. The Latsies tomorrow. Isfeld's this weekend. And then Glacier View right after that, followed by Vanier. It's a busy time of year in our schools, not just graduation, but all sorts of events and activities. So hats off to our teachers and staff and parents and everyone who does their work to boost our students up. That's one thing I've really noticed since I came to the Comox Valley 3.5 years ago, is just how much community involvement there is and support there is for our students. And I see that, and I think our students feel it. So that's it for me today. That's me and Lutam Sheila. I'm going to see her tomorrow. She's one of my favorite people in the district. She's going to be teaching some students at Arden some jigging skills. They're going to be performing at Lewis Park on Indigenous Peoples Day. So I look forward to continuing this work, and thanks for having me out in your schools and community. Gail Kessler.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm going to let everyone share their thoughts. You can pass.
I know that's just a little snippet of what's happening in our district, and I thank you for sharing. I know that your work in sharing what's happening with our students is really important, and also sharing with the community is very important too. So thank you, and I look forward. You had no pictures of your dog there. I'm surprised.
Really hard for me. I had to go through so many photos of my dog on my phone to get stuff. My phone is my main video camera. A lot of times, that's how good the cameras are. But yeah.
Grateful, Craig. Thank you for helping us feel like we're there, because a lot of the times, like, certainly, like, schedules for everyone are busy, and especially as you said in June, like the guilt of not being at everything that you're invited to be a part of. And thanks for lifting some of that up today. Grateful.
Waylaven, thank you very much. But I also want to say, is there any way that trustees could know about these events during the year? I know June is crazy for us, but these happen all throughout the year, and we're often never invited.
This is
Yeah.
a good point. And in there, I think there's something we've been talking about that hopefully we can get a more cohesive event schedule and calendar
Yeah.
for folks. So I agree.
Yeah, because we're supposed to be representing our schools and yet are not invited to events at the schools. And so that would be great. Like jigging, I want to go to tomorrow, but I didn't know it was happening. Somebody can help me out with that one. There we go.
If I may respond, is that I have a challenge as well. I found out from Sheila today because I emailed her today about catching up before the end of the school year. So a lot of this stuff can happen organically, and I have ideas around putting a bigger net out into schools for our staff to share events and activities for me, for you guys, but also to share with community.
Thanks. That was a lovely roundup, and I share the same request, that particularly at the ones that are district level and annually, it'd be great to, I think by year 3, I know some of them that come up routinely, but some I still feel like I find out after the fact. But yeah, thank you for providing some insight into particularly the ones that we don't get to see.
Thank you, Craig. That's a sliver of what Craig is around the district, so we appreciate
After
it.
my first presentation here that went way over time.
No.
Really focused on tightening it up.
Good job.
I don't know if I did, but I tried.
34 and a half.
It was amazing. Thank you. And it's such a beautiful way for June to get wrapped up, to see and visualize and just see the faces. So thank you so much for all your time that went into that presentation, let alone the hours and hours of eventing.
Yeah.
Next, we've got governance. We have none. Policy, we have none. Operations, we have none. Finance. Annual budget, operating capital, and special purpose funds report and draft bylaw. Jennifer Nelson, Assistant Secretary Treasurer. That's on pages 3 to 67 for everyone's reference.
And Jennifer had a hard act to follow.
Oh.
Budget talk.
Okay.
So I'll just get started. So we brought the preliminary operating budget to the committee of the whole on May 13th to provide an overview of the revenue and cost pressures, and went through the details with you at that time. And then we brought the feedback to the May 27th board meeting. So now what we've done is incorporated all of the capital and special purpose funding into the budget and provided the statutory ministry template. We've populated that now with the budget and bringing you the draft bylaw to give you an opportunity to review it prior to then receiving it at a board meeting to adopt the bylaw. So attachment 5 in the report on pages 34 to 49 is the ministry template, which is the final document that needs to be adopted by the board and submitted to the ministry by June 30th. I'm not going to go through the whole report and all of the details again at this time, because we've done that in a previous meeting. We have those presentations and reports available on our website. But what I will touch on today is really anything that's new or any changes since the last time the report was brought forward. So no changes to the overall projected increase to revenues. We're still anticipating a $3.15 million increase in revenues and is incorporated in our operating budget. So what we've done is just, you've seen these graphs at the last presentation, so you can see how the overall revenue is split between the provincial grant and other revenues. But what we've done is incorporated a small table just to highlight how those percentages came to be, so you can see the total dollar value. And that also aligns with the ministry template Schedule 2 on page 40 in the agenda. So the operating budget is incorporating $134 million of revenue this year. So similarly, on the cost pressure side, still continuing to anticipate a $3.1 million cost pressure. We've made no changes since the last time we presented the operating budget. And so again, just populating all of those expenses so you can see the breakdown in the operating fund of how instruction making up 81%. So you can see the total dollar value in there as well. So operating expenses are budgeted at $131.9 million. And so this corresponds to Schedule 2 in the template. And then similarly, just breaking it down in another way so that you can see how of that total $131.9 million, salaries is $91 million, employee benefits $23 million, and then services and supplies $17 million. So those details are in Schedule 2B and 2C of the template on pages 42 and 43. So no changes here. And then lastly, just once again, breaking it down, breaking salaries down for you. So same graph that we show the same percentages, just now you can see those total costs that are incorporated in the budget and how that breaks down between the employee groups. So we haven't.
I see everybody's confused. We're actually on pages 56 and moving on to 57 in our board package. So it's quite hard to make sure everybody's. Awesome. Sorry to interrupt. Just making sure it's good for our board.
Oh, you're
package.
looking at the presentation and I'm.
Yes, so
Okay.
So just because everybody's kind of flipping, so I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
everybody's on the same page.
Okay,
Numbers get a little confusing.
sorry about that.
No problem, no problem.
So yeah, I'm just going through the presentation, which obviously you have a copy of the presentation in your agenda. When I'm referencing the template, I'm trying to refer strictly to the actual budget that will be that we have in the package and behind the report. So just one of the changes that we've made since the last time we presented the budget in the report, we've added a table to identify the FTE. So there was an ask at the last committee of the whole to include some information around FTE of employees. So on page 18 of the board package, you've seen this whole report, but we incorporated a district staffing FTE summary within the report. So we've tried to provide sort of a high level number of FTE incorporated into this proposed budget versus the 23 or 24, 25 amended budget so that you can see any changes. So just to note with the support staff, it's a bit of a challenge because there's variations of different types of positions within support staff with different contractual hours per day. So we had to analyze each of the types of roles and take an average of what their hours per day so that we could come up with the total FTE for the year. So just drawing attention to that, that's new information available. So the budget continues to be balanced at this point. We're still able to maintain operations without relying on prior year surplus. And I just wanted to note, because in the actual budget or on the template, it appears as though we're requiring some prior year surplus. You'll see there's about $208,000 there to balance, and what that is made up of is some grant funding related to integrated child and youth that comes through in 2024-25, and we know we're going to have a balance that needs to be carried forward into the next year. And so the ministry requires that we report it this way. We show it as a appropriated prior year surplus to be spent in the next year. So although in the bylaw or in the template, you'll see that amount, page is on page 37 of your agenda.
That's where I was just trying to find it.
Yeah, it's a large document, and
very quickly to find the 200. I was looking for the line item.
yeah, so if you look on page 37, statement 2.
I've got it.
Yeah. So you'll see that it looks as though we're relying on surplus to balance our budget, but just wanting to highlight that it's not balancing our ongoing operations. It's related specifically to that grant that we need to hold on to and carry forward. So with that, it will not change the anticipated contingency reserve that we're budgeting of $3.1 million that we anticipate. This proposed operating budget would maintain that balance. So the budget bylaw also includes a capital fund, which includes expenditures related to land, buildings, computer hardware, vehicles, furniture, and equipment. So that's been incorporated, and funding for major and minor capital comes from the ministry. So we apply every year through the capital plan submissions that the board endorses. And so the budget actually reflects the amortization of the revenue and the tangible capital assets. So that's the amount that gets incorporated into this budget. And then the funding for local capital, we rely on our operating fund to transfer an annual amount in each year. So this year we are, and of course the local capital fund funds modulars, fleet, technology, furniture, and equipment. So we don't receive it from the ministry. We rely on our operating fund to fund those. So this year's budget anticipates a $1.47 million transfer. And so we've provided this table here to identify how that is split up and where those funds are going into those different categories. And then just providing a snapshot here, this is a look at our local capital reserve forecast. So this corresponds to attachment 2 to the report, which is on page 27 of the agenda. It's really tiny in there. Just really wanted to draw your attention to this. It came up at our last meeting as well, and just highlighting, so you can see the $1.4 million transferring in there. We've highlighted that number in the first year. And then each of those columns represent the categories of how the transfer is divvied up between fleet and copiers, modulars, and all the different types of expenses in local capital. And so this is a 5-year projection out, so you can see the balance forward, as well as the money coming in, the spend, and then how we're projecting over the course of 5 years to ensure that we are putting enough money in there to fund what we anticipate we're going to need to spend. So you'll notice on the modular column, we actually aren't putting any funds in there this year. And so that was a decision that was made last year not to contribute to modulars, because we were provided with a couple of capital projects that were going to help us with space, as well as there were some boundary adjustments that took place. So as we were analyzing our space and our funding last year, we were able to eliminate that transfer, and we're able to do so again this year based on our space needs and spend. However, we are anticipating that in future years, we will likely have to incorporate some more funding towards that, depending on our space analysis. As well as you'll notice on there the technology line item. So we look 8 years out in technology, and you'll notice in 2029 there you can see that red number, the 11,583. So although it is dropping a little bit below, we're looking kind of overall in the reserve, and we're ensuring that we have funds in contingency to ensure that we have funds available there. So special purpose funds are also rolled up into our budget bylaw. These are special funds that are set aside. They are externally restricted, and they can only be used for specific programs and approved expenses. So just listed some of them here for you, and we did provide some brief description of each of them in the report. So on pages 20 to 23 of the report, there's a few pages of description. So I won't go through each one of them, but they are listed there. And just noting that they make up this year in our budget $19.8 million in revenue. So it's a significant amount of money that we are also incorporating into the budget bylaw. We're still waiting on ministry confirmation on the First Nations student transportation and early care and learning funds from the ministry. So those are to be determined. And when we do receive that information, we'll then incorporate it into the amended budget. So you'll see these figures change as new information comes our way. And this also ties into the template as well. So the feedback that we received, we prepared a separate report for you on May 27th and went over that. We've now incorporated that into the full report just to keep everything together, so that if somebody was to read through, they could see all of the information compiled into one. We did receive some additional feedback from QP after the report was prepared for you last time. So we've updated the table on page 24 in your agenda. There's there's a table in there that got a few comments that we received verbally from our partners through presentations. And so the bottom two are related to QP's feedback. And just noting the bottom comment around the ask to restrict 24, 25 unfilled positions. So if there's surplus related to those unfilled positions, that those be restricted and support hiring of additional EAs in 25, 26. Staff are in the process of acknowledging that and ensuring that that takes place. So that would come back forward to the board in a separate briefing at the next board meeting, identifying that as a recommendation. We aren't at this point in the process. We're still compiling our year end. We're going to be working on a quarter four update for you on June 24th, just to give you a projection of where we anticipate the year end to land and where we think the surplus will be, as well as provide a list of some of the items that have popped up through the budget process that the board may want to consider to restrict funds for. But ultimately, the final point where you'll be restricting and making those decisions is after, like, we have our financial statements prepared and you are able to confidently make those final decisions. But our last quarter three update that came forward, we were projecting out about a 1.89 surplus at that point. So basically rolling up the operating, the capital, the special purpose funds, they all roll up into one document and bylaw, and just here before you is just a draft of that, what that bylaw will look like. So a total of $164,928,867 in the 25-26 bylaw at this point. And then lastly, just wanting to touch on the multi-year financial plan requirement. This is something that we did for the first time last year. It's due to the ministry in September. We really base it on where we land with the final annual adopted budget, and then we project out for a couple of, 2 years beyond. So at this point, we've got a draft for you. We've populated the multi-year financial plan based on the assumptions that we are aware of, and put that into the next few years, and just wanted to provide a snapshot today so that you can see how it's looking, that based on this current operating budget that we have in front of you today, and maintaining those similar operations, we can do so over the next 2 years without drawing on our contingency reserves and maintaining that status quo budget. So just wanted to share that because it is something to keep in mind when you're looking at the current year, is how does that look into the future as well. And then lastly, just the next steps. So at this point in the budget process, we would hope to bring the budget bylaw back to you at the June 24th board meeting for adoption, and then we would submit it to the ministry for June 30th. And then as well bring the multi-year financial plan back in a report to you in September. That's it for the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to pass our talking stick around to see if anyone has any questions or comments.
Thank you. Every time you or one of your team presents, I get a little bit more sticks, so I appreciate that. I do have another question about the local capital reserve forecast spreadsheet. And I was curious about 3 new columns that were added this year. I'm wondering if you, I know that each don't have an expenditure in it for this year, but if you could explain
why they're there, why they've been added, and what types of, yeah, if you could just provide more information, because I don't think, unless I missed it in the presentation in May, I don't recall learning that there were new ones.
Okay, sure. No, thank you for that question. So the 3 new columns that were added is we have a future major capital project line item, we have a security camera line item, and a local government commitment line item. So the future major capital transfer of 200,000 was actually set up last year when we were, and the Cumberland project was announced. The ministry required a financial commitment from us to contribute to that project, and that was 200,000. So we've put those funds into the reserve so that they are there and available. We're not having to draw on our operating budget when the time comes to pay that out. The other item, security cameras, was something that came up this year. Many of the security cameras at our schools are now aging out and needing replacement. And so we just really, in reviewing of our technology, identified this as an item that we hadn't been properly funding. And so we've set up an ongoing transfer to ensure that we're able to replace those cameras and deal with them as they age out. And then the last one, local government commitments. That was something discovered in last year end. The district actually has a commitment to contribute to the track replacement and refurbishment at the Comox Valley Regional District. There's an agreement in place that when that needs replacing, we actually had to be contributing a certain amount each year, and we discovered we hadn't been for some years. So that was a catch up to implement that, as well as there is a commitment to cost share in the replacement of the artificial turf as well. That we realized there were not funds properly getting set aside to be able to meet that commitment when the time comes. So we established that in the local capital reserve, and we're ensuring that we're properly funding it for that reason.
Okay. Just a follow-up is that by memory, when we were in discussion about the most recent artificial turf field, is that we were told that there would be no cost to the district. And so it's a curiosity that there will be a cost. And so I think that's probably something that going to have to have a conversation that's going to have to happen at a different level, because I have emails that say there would be no cost. So I'm a little confused about how some of the decision making happens, and then where as a board we pass a motion to do one thing, and then we're finding out that there are costs that we need to set money aside for future. So, but that wasn't why I asked you this, but I was curious about the column. So thank you for your explanation.
I don't like being second because my brain has not worked
You
yet.
can go around again. We can go around again.
So I have a comment and then just a question. And first of all, this is my 19th budget. And what I've noticed over the last 19 years is that amount of operational funding that we get to choose to spend on is getting smaller and smaller every year. That targeted funding is getting larger. And even though our budget's 154 million, what percentage we can actually spend on things that we want is actually quite limited in our district size. And I'm disappointed that that funding is still not catching up to what we need. But I guess my question is to the contingency fund. And our budget is aligned with our strategic plan, which we're required to do. We have that surplus. And I'm listening over the last little while, there's been some asks and some wants and requests for priorities, whether it's mental health, student safety, and student well-being. And while they're not identified within the budget, can you explain how we could take some of that funding that we have and maybe look at prioritizing certain things and why we would do it on a one-term basis and not a continuing basis? Because while we have surplus money now, we're quite, compared to other districts, well off, we don't know what's going to happen next year to where our finances are. So I'm just wondering if you can maybe just help some of us understand why we don't target that funding year to year and the downfall to doing that and how we can utilize that. Does that kind of make sense, what I was asking?
Yeah, so once you put something in your operating budget, then it's there continually until you have to make a decision to remove it. When you're referring to the surplus, so at the end of the year, if we have funds over and above what the contingency reserve is, that's where you could make those decisions to restrict portions of those surplus for specific initiatives on a short-term basis. So for 1 to 2 years, if you, depending on how much funding is available. And it's on a temporary basis so that when the funds run out, the initiative, the decision could be made to restrict further surplus in that time or build it into your operating budget if there's room. So there will be opportunity in this process at the end of the day when we look at what our surplus is to be able to determine if there are certain initiatives that the board wants to secure some of those funds for and carry forward into the next year. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
I think so. And I'll go around because I might have another one, but I'll let everyone else have a chance. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I have one question and also just a general expression of gratitude for the way we're sitting tonight, feeling drastically different in terms of just like less presentational and more conversational and yeah, I just am appreciative of questions and sort of perspectives as we go around for everyone. My question is in regards to approving what I know we're not tonight doing, but in September, our multi-year financial plan. And I guess my question is around when there are if there are perhaps to be a drastic shift in the way that we do things in coming years. I mean, there's been things before the board fairly recently as asks from QP. There's another ask perhaps from QP here. If those kinds of sort of significant departures from the ways things are now come to be, I guess I'm just curious about the process with multi-year financial planning being approved by the board. Does that mean then if that were to happen, do we amend our multi-year financial plan? Does it I'm just curious a little bit about that because I'm still fairly new to it.
The multi-year financial plan is really just a forecast. It's not a budget. It's just a tool for like a financial control to ensure that we're not kind of going off the rails financially. It's not a plan that is in a bylaw that's adopted. It's received for information and sent to the ministry. So, and we wouldn't even be updating it at the amended budget stage. We would just look at the annual point. And the reason we don't do that is at the amended budget stage, that's when we actually incorporate all those surplus restrictions. So we add those in to the budget and then we take them out when we go to do the next budget. So it's not, there's no concern with that. No, you're not committing to anything. It's really just a forecast only. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the further clarification. I really benefited from seeing the multi-year projections. And so thank you for that.
I much appreciation for the approach of pointing out where the differences are from the last presentation. That's really helpful. And I also really liked the extra pieces that incorporated the eventual budget that's sent to Victoria. I have questions, a couple of them, but I'll just start with one. Start with, I think I felt a little bit of confusion around where we have the preliminary budget position setting out where the expected revenue increases will be, and then the cost increases, and it seems like we've incorporated some of the requests of partner groups into those cost increases, almost such that those requests now take up all of the extra funds that may have been considered kind of discretionary that would have allowed for some decision. And I, prior to the survey that I appreciate we now have the results of and had at the last board meeting, and then the partner groups, I see we have a few requests from CUPE that are almost feel like they're an after thought in terms of, I'm not sure how we would assess at this stage how or where we might be able to fit them in if we did decide they were a priority. I mean, I take it that we'd have to take something else out of this two-page list at page 28 and 29. Yeah, I think that's kind of my only feedback in terms of looking at budgets going forward. I think my preference would be to know what each of the partner groups says and what that might be costed out at, and then also in relation to our general public survey and maybe some greater information about what if we were acting on some of the requests from the public, what would that look like? Yeah, I feel like there's not a lot of room or space to make decisions that look anything different than what's in page 28 and 29, and that would be my only hope for the future, is that the requests for different pieces might be looked at on a separate piece of paper than where we are expecting there to be cost increases. Just so there's more of a weighing of the different like suggestions and proposals that are coming in.
So the comment about the QP comment, so that was specific to, we will actually be looking at the surplus from 24-25 separately. So that's outside of that 3.1 increase. So the board will have an opportunity to review the surplus restrictions separate. So that ask will actually be considered at that time, the surplus restrictions. And I think just one of the reasons why staff are acting on that one specifically is there's an awareness of extra designated students coming in that we know are going to be in place in the next year. And so it's a staffing process to get them in place. And so that's how we would be able to fund them, is through some unfilled positions this year. And so that ask was really aligned with something that staff had already had an awareness that was an issue that needs to be addressed operationally. So there's no moving ahead with asks in the operating budget without board consideration. And so that you definitely will have an opportunity at that surplus point to weigh in on all the feedback you've received to date in making decisions with those surplus restrictions separately.
Can I ask what the timing is on that, and if there's any sense of like what that amount may be, or is it just simply way too preliminary to know that?
So we're bringing the Q4 update to you at the board meeting this month. So on June 24th, you'll see a projection of where we think year end will land and what the surplus potentially will look like, because we'll be having to make some estimates still until we finalize year end and we receive, and the auditors come in and complete our audit and our financial statements are done. So you will see a look at that on June 24th, and you'll have an idea, like you'll have a list of some of the staff recommendations based on the feedback that's come through. At that point, we won't be able to make the final restrictions at that point. You'll see it again in September with the financial statements, but you'll have a good indication of where we'll land there then. Okay.
I'd like to look at the special purpose fund. You can go to page 15, 16, or you can go to page 64, whatever side you're on. I'm just looking at the special purpose fund, the school generated funds. Can you expand on what that amount is, like what that amount represents? And I can ask.
So school-generated funds is the amount of funds that are generated at the school level. So this includes like school fundraising, school fees, field trips, reasons that the school is actually collecting money and depositing into their bank account, and then spending related to school-based activities. So it's outside of district-provided operating budget. It's all generated at the school level. So some of it will be grants. So let's say a school applies for Breakfast Club of Canada, that is included in school-generated funds.
How come it's a static number? It's like it feels like
300,000.
yeah.
It's very hard to predict what school-generated funds will look like. So what we do is we collectively, as a district, we look at the funds that have been generated in past budget years and where we think those will land for the coming school year. So it really hasn't changed much since the amended budget. It will be re-reviewed in the amended based on the year-end totals that we see as of June 30th. Yeah, so.
I'm reading that right, that it's $3 million, correct? That's. Okay, I'll pin that for a second. Regarding the public survey results, I'm curious how that feedback is reflected in the budget allocations. How that, was there any, after the response?
The feedback came in and was presented on May 27th. So this budget has been developed in concurrence of that. So ultimately the feedback that's come in will, I mean, the board certainly has an opportunity. They can request changes. However, at this point in the process, we have a statutory deadline to get the budget adopted, but it can certainly be referred to for making surplus restrictions. We will get into the amended budget process. So that's when we know our exact enrollment and any changes that will happen. And we'll be preparing another bylaw at that point that the board will review, and feedback can be received or referred to as well through that process. So that answers.
Just wanted to quickly touch on that, the camera replacement for the cameras. Are these internal cameras at a school or external or both?
Not sure. We do have our Director of Information Technology here, I assume. Okay.
It's both? And this is just all only replacing current stuff.
So the wording restricting portions of the surplus, can partner groups make requests during the budget process for restricting surplus funds? And is this terminology correct for future years? And if so, could you please outline the process for surplus requests?
I guess maybe I just will reiterate some of the stuff that Jennifer has said is, you know, this is the 25-26 budget that had very little wiggle room, as we know, in terms of what we could possibly, outside of all of our contractual expenses, to do anything with. And so if we back up to this school year, the 24-25 school year, we anticipate there will be a surplus, and what we're using to make recommendations and bring forward is exactly that. The survey, meetings that we've had with DPAC, with CDTA, with our partner groups, trustees and then being able to bring that forward. Here's what we've heard, and then make decisions on what would be included. So, off the top of my head, some of the priorities that we have heard in various meetings are around department heads, around increasing the number of our educational assistants. There has been a discussion around the priority for sexual health and gender-based violence. So you can anticipate that those are some of the things that we would be bringing forward as recommendations to look at or restrictions. So
I think
we still have time, and we're using everything that we've learned through our feedback process, which isn't just the survey, but again, meetings that our superintendent and I have had with various partner groups. So I hope that helps.
I mean, I think it's like, as a partner group, we're trying to kind of develop our own strategy for budget asks. And when we're looking at this particular budget, like, we're in support of the priorities that have been embedded within it. But we also have specific DPAC asks that we don't necessarily see in this document. So for us, if we know there's going to be a surplus of 800,000 or 400,000 plus 800,000, then perhaps we would direct our meeting asks towards that surplus, knowing that that's somewhat of a consistent number. But getting that terminology correct and making sure that our fluency in these documents is a little bit more adept, so that we don't seem like we're competing with our partner groups, because we can say, we see the importance of that being a line item, but we're hoping if there's enough surplus that this could be an initiative that we can all work together on.
And our hope would be that we're developing a list of priorities. And then again, like typically in any budget, you would have three opportunities. You would have your operating budget, and depending on what's available in that, we would have the surplus that we could possibly restrict. And then, of course, we have our amended budget. So if we have a list of priorities that we're working with as we go through those processes, including the amended budget in February, we can refer back to that list and say, okay, well, we didn't get to that one. Is now the time where we can incorporate that. So.
Yeah, part of that for 1 second. Of course. It's helpful for us for timing to try and as things emerge, and to try and make sure that as volunteers we don't miss specific important meetings that were then reflected on as opportunities. That's the kind of thing I think where we're coming at it from.
Yeah, thank you.
Couple of questions. One is, I think, somewhat tied into that question. Is there a list of positions and areas that the district is cutting going into next year? That on the pages, the 28-29 document, it has the brackets for decreases, but there's nothing listed here. But for example, we know that the district physical literacy coordinator is being cut, even after their great presentation that they did for board 2 weeks ago. And we are wondering what else is being cut, because that just came to us that that's being cut. And now we're left wondering what else is being cut, and how can we really respond in survey or as advocates when we don't know what services that are being provided right now are being cut by the district?
For that one in particular, or any other positions that are funded by grants that might be 1 year, 2 year, they wouldn't be viewed as a cut. Like so my understanding is, and
I can jump
somebody
in if you want.
Can help, but that the physical literacy grant was provided for the last couple of years. We got it again for this current year. We don't have it going into 25-26, so it wouldn't be viewed as a cut because those are grants that only occur for a certain period of time, or like 1 year. And typically something like physical literacy would be then to build capacity within the district by having that position with other teachers, right? And that, like I said, ministry grant.
I can just jump in a little just to provide some context. Cuts, yeah, strong word. I would, just for some background, physical literacy was a post-COVID 3-year secondment that was supported by grant funds outside of our operational funds. It was to finish in the 2023-24 school year as a capacity building supports post-COVID to support our elementary educators with physical literacy. We were fortunate mid to late June last year, a considerable grant came in to support the work for this current school year. That grant came in near the end of the school year, and we were able, thanks to our HR department and CDTA, to kind of make some last minute adjustments, action that grant funds to extend the secondment by 1 year. And it was primarily covered by external grants. We have not had any confirmation that there is external grant funding to support it for next year. That being said, we would be more than willing to receive grant funds from external organizations if that information comes forward.
So you're saying that if those grants do become available, or grants enough to cover a significant portion of the salary, then it would be a...
Yeah, we would need to see the terms of the grants and work with whoever the grant provider is to ensure that it connects with our initiatives and what it would look like moving forward. But as far as we know, there's nothing yet.
My second question was, where in the budget does it account for outside contractors who are hired? Like, I know that Ian Hesselgrave was hired to help with the new building, somebody who retired and then was brought back again and obviously getting a wage. And I know that that's not an unusual practice. Where in the budget is that accounted for?
I can answer that. Transitional support. There was a surplus restriction last year to fund temporarily some work of contracted services, specifically to projects that had begun prior to an employee's retirement, for them to see those projects through. So that was part of the budgeted surplus appropriation from last school year. So again, just a temporary measure.
We also charge, like for that specific question, they're working to support capital projects. So we're able to also charge some of the fees towards those capital projects as part of the getting them off the ground. So that's within the capital component funded by there's project management component of the funding that comes through.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your work. I guess my curiosity would be a follow-up to the question around programs that may have a time limit and situations that come in. From my understanding that the budget is passed and then the surplus is looked at for special projects. And I'm assuming that's in September that would begin, or October. My curiosity is, when there's situations or projects that need an earlier start time, what is available to ensure we're not missing out on opportunities that really benefit our students who are sitting in the middle at this moment, just because of, I don't know, timelines, I guess you would say. So how can we look at money or surplus we may have to be able to capitalize on opportunities before that time comes?
So we are looking at that already by bringing quarterly updates to the board. So we brought a quarterly update in April, and then we're doing so again in June. So we are already analyzing where we think we're going to land. And when there's an urgent need for something that needs to be considered and actioned prior to, those decisions can be made in advance of postings that are dependent on funding or if so on that surplus coming to fruition. So although, you know, we do have to ensure those funds are there, there is time to get ahead of it and ensure staffing is properly in place to fund any initiatives that are brought up.
Yeah, and when things are a high priority, I mean, even our staffing processes usually happen well in advance of knowing what our operating grant is or the budget being approved. We know we need to hire teachers. We know we need to hire EAs. In the last week or so, we had information around the need for additional EAs. So we're not going to not move forward with that. But I think maybe, I don't know if that answers your question or if you're getting more to kind of like a specialized project or.
Yeah. Like if there's an opportunity, but it still kind of answered my question. So I have an understanding of what that can look like. Curiosity for the request from CUPE around restricting a portion of unfilled EA positions. Was that because we were unable to find people to fill those positions? So would restricting that, yeah. So we would be holding in the hopes that we would find more people in the year to come through different recruitment.
And there is some inherent risk when you're, you know, assuming that you're not going to be able to fill. So we go into any given year with the intention of it. And then my understanding is we don't have so much a problem filling all of our regular EA jobs, but backfilling when they're not at work is the problem. And yeah.
Thank you. I know how much work goes into this. I'm just happy that we've got a learning improvement fund next year. I look forward to collaborating with the people to spread that out.
We have a meeting set up.
Awesome. I obviously don't have any questions, but maybe some comments that might help with some further understanding about restrictions. And when you hear about cuts and things happening in those words, I obviously am not aware of any cuts specifically. When I think of the operating budget and what is being looked at to be approved, we're considering all the items that are built into the operating budget. And when we restrict surplus, we're really looking to do that on a temporary basis. So it's technically not built into a budget. So like positions that are funded with targeted dollars, they're generally for a year, maybe 2 to 3 years, and it really is a temporary position or assignment. And so the contract ends or the assignment ends after that time. It's not necessarily cut. It was never built in to be an ongoing service or staffing cost that was to be expected in future budget years. So just thought that might help.
Maybe I'll just add, I just thought I'd circle back to the comment around the turf, because I just wanted to clarify that in the local capital, the new column, the funds that are actually in that column are only related to the track of funds that we've set aside. And then we didn't put anything in there this year in that line item, but it's sort of built into future years because it's a bit of an unknown right now. That being said, the fund in future years includes the transfer for the track, as well as the commitment we found in old documents related just to the first turf, not the second one. So we haven't actually put any money in, and we are not slating to this year. So I just wanted to clarify that. Oh, am I allowed to go back?
Sure.
Just for that point, those restrictions specifically, the 200,000 and the 225 were approved by the board in the surplus restrictions when the financial statements were approved back in September.
Curiosity about on page 67. I know that the projected are just projected, but one of the things that kind of jumped out to me was our local capital transfer. It looks like for 2026, 2027 kind of jumps up a bit there. And right away, that kind of makes me concerned, knowing that this year our enrollment was a little bit softer growth than what we were anticipating. And looking at our community growth in itself and feeling like it's almost plateauing, I guess if that's the proper word, where we're not quite growing right after COVID. It was, pretty substantial. So I'm curious to why there is such a jump, and is it something that we need to be concerned about as a board to ensure that we can continue operating, or where is that kind of really referenced, that big jump?
Yeah, so if you turn to page 27 of the agenda, that we can look at the local capital forecast.
Yep.
And then you can see what the change is into the future year. So basically the jump is the modulars, as well as anticipating additional funds for potentially the track and the turf. So what I will say is that if we have some funds in surplus, we could restrict that to help us the local capital or the local government commitments that we need to contribute each year. So we may not need to put that in, as well as with the modulars. So you'll notice that we're anticipating a spend this year of 950,000. Well, that was identified at a bit of time ago when we were looking at space. We weren't quite sure what we were going to have to do to meet the needs of some of the space challenges, but just in some of our recent conversations this week, it's appearing as though we'll likely not need to spend that full amount. There will likely be funds left within modulars. So if we don't spend it, it will stay in the reserve, and it will ultimately potentially reduce the amount we would need to transfer. So I would just say that we're always continually revisiting this 5-year forecast, and we're very conservative. At this point, we'd be erring on the side of caution and ensuring that we're transferring more than enough, but refining it each year. So at this point, I would say no worries. Our hope is that number would come down.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, I'd like us to maybe find out a little bit more about the new turf field, because I want to reiterate with Michelle, we base our decisions on the information that's provided to us. And that was very clear because it didn't feel like a financial burden to agree to. So then, the idea of it being a burden on our students is, unsettling, I suppose. But thank you so much for all your work. And we're going to go around one more time just for any final thoughts or questions that anyone has.
I want to say that this is probably the most robust conversation that I've been part of about surplus. And have a few thoughts. And I think that we're really fortunate at this time to actually be considering passing a budget that restricts money or unrestricted operating surplus within the range that's allocated in our policy, because so many districts there's just not enough money for them to do what they need to do, and they are putting, I say, aside pennies and having their fingers crossed for the whole year. I've been reading the transcripts for the Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services in terms of education, and listening to boards talk about the financial straits that they're in, and knowing that the pie of money for education needs to get bigger from the provincial government and not just sliced in smaller pieces or layers of pieces. And when we restrict that money to be safe, we're not able to provide services for our students at a level that we could if we could spend the whole thing. So our students that are sitting there are students that are sitting here with us tonight. There are some things that are not happening for them that could be happening in a year. So when we're considering what we might do with funds that we're fortunate enough to have at the end of the year, for me, they still need to really be aligned with our strategic plan and centered as closely on to students as possible, because those were funds that could have been used to support a student or students in the year. And I think about one of the schools one of my children went to years ago, different district. They fundraised for years and years, these hot dog sales for a playground. And finally somebody said, how much money's in the account? And there was well enough money to have built a playground years before, but they just kept fundraising and they didn't. So all of the students went through the whole time at that school, never got the playground upgrade, but the money was sitting there. And that's not here, and that was then. But just thinking about when we are fortunate enough to have the opportunity for surplus, that the consideration for what it's spent on is as important as when we pass our budget and as when we pass our amended budget. So it's and I didn't hear this tonight, but it still needs to hold the same values and decision making for all of the other decisions that we have to make, which are tough. And we're in a rare space in BC right now that we're actually have the ability, with the information presented, with the decisions that have been made, to pass a budget without having to make recognized reductions, notwithstanding grants, funding ending, and reorganizations or whatever may shift a team. I just think that just walking that walk in thinking about what we could do with that money, in all the seriousness that we do our other work. Just felt like I needed to say that. But it's a great discussion. And I've, never been part of a discussion that we've talked about surplus in such a way. So I appreciate it.
You kind of said most of what I was going to say.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's all good. Over the many years in talking about budgets, we've had many conversations of what students first. And it's really nice that we are, and I have to say this, I'm thankful we're being a conservative board. I'm thankful that we're being cautiously approaching, and I'm thankful that, well, yes, we have many things we want to add to our students. We don't know what's going to happen next year or the following year. And I think that I would hate to start something and then come this time next year, we're sitting at the table, we're talking about taking that away and we're cutting because we have no clue where we are with the budget. We have been told by the Ministry of Education and by the Ministry of Education and by every other school board in the province that we are looking for some difficult times in the next year or two. And I'm thankful that as a board, we're having these conversations and we're looking at our priorities and we're determining what do we need now in consultation with our community and our partners. And I would love to give everybody what they want. I really would love to do that, but the reality is there. I don't know if we can, because I don't know what's going to happen next April, next May. We're sitting at this table and we're looking at cutting, like my colleagues down in Parks for Collicum, $2 million from a budget. And they're not talking about adding, they're talking about taking away. And I think Campbell River is the same, and Cowichan is the same, everyone's the same. So while I would love to add everything that we've heard, I also don't want next year to be sitting back here and taking that away. And I was on a board for 3 years that we did that. And I will never want to go through that again, because at the end of the day, it's not us who suffer, it's the students suffer. So I thank our senior leadership, and I thank our financial amazing wizards over there, because you brought us a budget that I think that we can live within our means, but also gives the opportunity to listen to our partner groups and add those things in there on a temporary basis that can support students without worrying about cutting for the next couple of years. So I thank you for that. That opportunity will be there. So I think that I also heard, and I will turn to my second, talk about that one there, is that we can probably maybe change things how we do our, this is my 17th budget, and every year it's different. So I'm going to say that because we do it this way, it doesn't mean next year, but I'm hoping through the process we have, we will, our amazing Secretary Treasurer there, will listen how we can improve the process for next year. And I want to see students sitting beside Craig over there next year, coming in and having their voice at the table, because what we do impacts them, and we got to get it right. That's my spiel.
Thanks, it's good to be prepared. I was only going to share, I totally hear when people say, where do I see it in, like when that question comes up, because it is hard to look at largely quantitative information and sometimes see like stories within. So one thing that I just thought would be worthwhile sharing, that it's just like a direct call from community that is specifically reflected in this budget. So I'm glad that that was heard and quickly reflected, is that both our administrators on the islands and our community schools both went from a 0.5 in this new budget to a 0.6 FTE for administration, which I think was a direct ask from community, and grateful just to share that. I think sometimes it can be hard to see where the calls from community, where the calls from partner groups, and where the students are being directly impacted in such a quick way. So grateful for that. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. I apologize for always getting up. I'm dealing with an issue, so I need to move a lot. So just know that I'm listening to every word, and I have to keep moving. So I don't have a baby. I'm not pregnant, but this is what I must do in order to sit. Okay. I just want to say that I see some very specific additional budget priorities that directly align with the top priorities that the board, there are strategic priorities that link to the plan. So I just want to say thank you for that. The Indigenous Engagement and Knowledge Specialist, because that's one right there, right? So I'm also really excited about the increased school supply budget allocations, the inflationary additions per FTE rate for supplies. Wow, huge. So I see a lot of, and then of course, school department heads. Anytime that distributive leadership is supporting directly in-class student learning, I'm up for that. That's fantastic, because one of our first values is what? Learning, right? We want to center the budget. Our plan is all centered around student learning. What happens? How can we better support kids in the classroom? Every child in this district. So thank you for that. I'm happy with that. I wish we could do a lot more. We would love to, of course. But as Janice mentioned prior, I'm not sure if it was this meeting or a prior one, but the percentage of funds that we can actually use to support and enhance and grow learning in our district becomes smaller and smaller every year, because the ministry isn't funding as much per student. So for learning, that's where we're at. So the fact that we can do this little bit is amazing. We'd love to be able to do more. Again, Wayla Lynn for this work and the explanation and the stories and embedded, and for embedding further comparative analysis through the years.
I'm thankful for this opportunity to have our partner groups here. I look forward to future discussions where even more of our partner groups can be present. And as always, there's always learning that goes on with these discussions, and I appreciate being even more informed.
Just circling back to the conversation we had with earlier, Candice, thank you very much for that information. I think I clearly understand the concept of the grant and the positions that are created and what the terminology, that completely makes sense, totally understand. I guess the pickle would be, especially coming from our partner group, is that if we don't know when that grant is running out, we don't know when those positions are ending, how can we have a conversation around that? How can we as a partner group say, hey, for the last couple of years, this has been happening, this is the work that's been done. If we don't know that that position is now done, and that person's going to go back to whatever other job they had, they might not technically be laid off, but that position is now no longer happening. Makes sense, but we don't know that, and that's a problem. So I guess my follow-up question is, what other grant-based positions at this point that will not be continuing in the next school year?
I'm not sure off the top of my head I would know that, because grants will come through and different people may overlook them. Definitely the physical literacy one. I'm just going to look to Candice and Jennifer can you think of any other grants that are specifically ending?
Sometimes we receive funding. I know we received funding through Jordan's Principles last year, which isn't necessarily used to fund positions specifically. It can be. So sometimes that depends and might be unique to one student. It could be 1 year. And so those details we wouldn't share for confidentiality reasons. I'm thinking to our special purpose funds and if we've had any changes. I know affordability has ended, but there weren't positions tied to it. And sometimes we receive funding through careers-related grants. So for dual credit programming, which might be used to help offset some of the current teacher costs that we have, but it's not funded FTE specifically, so there'd be no reduction in an FTE. I can't think of any others.
I would like, and that's kind of the unfortunate part is we're seeing fewer grants supporting our money. That's probably one of the reasons why we're probably struggling at pinpointing a grant.
The physical literacy one is easier because it's an external grant. It's not provided by the ministry. It was through Pacific Sport Foundation. And I can't think of any others right now.
I would like to think that when the grant, when we first got it, that the person that went into that role would have known it was temporary. But to your point, how would everyone else know that? And whether or not we talked about it when it was first put in the budget even. So that's great feedback.
There's also changes too within some programming. So the targeted funds for Indigenous education, as an example, the IEC might decide to change the level of staffing or what positions they're supporting with their use of funds. And I know that they've used some of their surplus as well to fund positions on a temporary basis.
We have Joe that would like to maybe speak up behind us here as well.
Sorry, but
Please chime in.
I know Jay will be able to back me up on this, but I do believe the work experience, there was a grant there that was tied to a position, and that is ending this year at point two.
Thank you for that.
So that's a grant is running out, unfortunately. She did a great job. Communication. As well,
No, that's great.
Thank you.
That was a specific grant, 1 year, only for .2 support, to support Indigenous work experience placements.
Yeah, okay. I have like 3 million questions about school generated funds. Now that it's $3 million. Coming from a curiosity around being able to better understand our site-based funds through a lens of equity, if a school is applying for grants, how is that communicated to PACs and school community? How would a PAC hear about their grants that a school is applying for? What is the school budget transparency process? Where would PACs go to better understand the amounts their schools are working with as school generated funds? And is there an opportunity to work together for grants and fundraising, charitable donations from the community in the context of a tighter budget? The majority of PACs are not societies and cannot issue charitable donations and receipts, but the district, I believe, can. Where is the best information to get more about, where is the best place to get more information about this? And can we follow up with your department?
I mean, start. I mean, I'd be happy to start.
I'm happy for that to be a later
The answer. I feel like most of those questions should be answered by the school principal and the school-based teams. Centrally, we don't get involved in the school-generated funds. Like, we have access to them, and we can see them, and schools reconcile and have accounting processes that come through our department, and we support with training and stuff as well. But as to how schools generate funds, any fundraising they do joint with PAC or on their own is all should be approved by the principal of the school. And that's outlined very well in our admin procedures related to school generated funds and fundraising. To your question about the charitable information, the district does have charitable status, mainly intended to support the district's bursary program. We can issue receipts, ensuring that donations meet the eligibility requirements under Canada Revenue Agency and their specific guidelines for receipting. Again, school principals are asked to consult with finance prior to accepting donations. We simply don't have the capacity to assist schools with fundraising efforts and issuing tax receipts for every donation they receive. We're also unable to issue receipts on behalf of other organizations. So like if PAC is doing specific fundraising on their own, we can't issue receipts on their behalf. Fundraising must be done at the school level and donations made directly to them. Did I miss anything? There were a lot of questions there, so I would.
In the sake of time, maybe we can continue this on because we are already at 9 p.m., but thank you for that. Well done.
I would like to say though, like that's something that I think we've maybe touched on with Superintendent Morrow, and I think we can continue to do that and probably help bridge any gaps between site-based administrators and our parents.
I do want to thank you for your work on the budget. That the CDTA budget is much smaller, but I know how much work it takes in terms of working with it, and it's far less complicated. So thank you very much for that. I would be remiss if I don't make it one comment, though, as we're talking about this idea of surplus, just where that surplus came from, the not replacing EAs, which means students not supported, teachers having to do extra work, the increase in enrollment at NIDES, and that means students' needs not being met because of the massive class sizes that they're facing, that we may count ourselves fortunate and pat ourselves on the back, oh, what great shape we're in, but it has a cost.
Just wanted to acknowledge the contributions of everyone and the gratitude I have to be here and to learn from everyone about the business of education. And now these numbers do have hearts behind them and purposes, so that we carry that in our decision making. And that was clear here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing your perspectives and feedback.
I have one more comment, if that's okay. I was just going through and reading the survey, and I am really appreciative of the fact that it shows a positive theme of needing more frontline, more EAs, and that we're very grateful for the 50 extra top-ups we got for our EAs this year. So we have more positions. So thank you. I hope we fit in the budget.
I'll just throw in some additional comments around the school generated funds. So 3 million sounds like a lot, but that is amongst all of our schools. So every single school location, that is the forecast in what they'll generate and what they'll spend. And so when you think of some of the secondaries, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing through accounts that will relate to like exchange trips and those bigger events that they do. And I just wanted to point out that the 34,000 budgeted increase to school budgets is so small.
It's tiny.
That's distributed amongst 22 sites. It has nothing to do with school generated funds, and it is not near enough for what they will require. It's like a few $100s for each school.
I turned into a pumpkin at 9, so.
I just too want to express my gratitude to both Candace, Jennifer, and everybody in the finance department that are supporting you. You're always calm and cool and professional, and the presentations, there's a lot of work that goes behind putting these together. So you're both rock stars. Thank you. And thank you to the group, because this circle just feels amazing. So.
Thank you. I'm going to move on. We're at our time, but we definitely need some excellent information and update here from our Associate Superintendent, Jay Dixon, and Director of Information Technology, Josh Porter, on update on digital device policy implementations, page 68 and 69. Awesome. Who's first?
Oh, no, this is just us together.
Okay.
We don't have a flash presentation for you. We have the information, the briefing note. However, I do have some flashy signs I took off the walls today during a visit to Vanier that I have to return. So I'm just going to hand those out before I start rambling on. Literally was at Vanier this afternoon and saw them. I thought that would be perfect. And I was told that by the vice principal that these signs are available for all schools, and other schools have developed their own and provided them to the print shop as an effort that they began this year to work on just awareness and signage. Really, Josh and I are here to really listen, engage in some conversation. We did kind of touch base in January and put a survey out to all of our school principals and vice principals, just wondering how it's going. We did reach out to our student group that was mentioned today that meets up in the circle up here, and brought together our kind of working group that we had the previous year. And we did just a quick reach out to our principals at the end of last month as well. It's kind of unusual because a year ago, pre-election time, we had a lot on the news around cell phones and personal devices in schools. And as background, I like to provide a little background. As you remember, we had late spring, a provincial order provided to us to make some amendments to our school district and all of our school codes of conduct. And we had specific language to embed in our code of conduct. So we went through that exercise and we worked as a group collective, presented a few times here, I believe, over our approach, and our schools were tasked with implementing at the end of last school year and the beginning of this year. And I'd say throughout BC and throughout Canada, everything's gotten pretty quiet. And we're kind of wondering, well, what does that mean? And we're still trying to figure out what that means. So really, themes that emerged was, that there's been some limited pushback. Overall, the restriction has generally resulted in a positive outcome. I'd say leaning more specifically to our elementary schools. Majority of schools had already policies in place. The new restrictions allowed for consistent application. There was the importance of clear and consistent communication with students and parents as a theme that came forward. Parent involvement when students violate the rules is important. Staff modeling appropriate behavior was a theme. I believe that came from student perspective. Use of signage, announcements, and assemblies to reinforce expectations. Those are the kind of main themes. I'll give Josh the floor, anything to weigh in, and I just welcome, just going around the circle. Anything else to add?
You've nailed it, Jay.
I think we believe that there's still work to be done. And really, I think we all have work to be done around our devices.
Mine's away.
Am I the only one with it out?
Mine's on, it's facing down.
I'm dealing with a family emergency, so I apologize.
So there's the flip side, though, of connecting to our strategic plan, technology, flexible learning. So how do we find ways to appropriately embrace it as well? And that's much of what our district leads of technology are really been challenged with next year. But wherever the talking stick is, it can start.
I've got the stick and I'm actually going to start this time. Rudely, I apologize, but I want to say that this year has been the quietest year for parent complaints over online exploitation and bullying. And I hope that the work in digital literacy that's happening in our district is working with our students and that our young ones are learning and understanding a little bit better of hopefully how to navigate. I don't know if that's a direct correlation or not, but it feels like, as you said, I feel like I'm not getting the regular emails about things this year. And for those parents that aren't going through that horrendous experience of how horrible it can be, whether it's bullying or exploitation, it is traumatizing for the families and it is absolutely horrible to go through. And so for that, I'm really thankful for the team's work and all the work you guys have done, because I believe the students are listening.
I'd be curious about finding out a little more information, like by school. Student Voice is a great place to ask questions. I also think that maybe the student councils or whatever, leadership groups or whatever, to see if students would want it to no schools at all, no phones at all at school. That peer pressure piece, that social media piece. Just curious if there was thought or if there's been any trend, because I don't know what the students said in Student Voice because it doesn't really show. But is there a sense that the students are happy, that many students are happy that now it's not their decision to make, that somebody else has made it for them? Or are they fighting the fact that somebody's maybe telling them what to do because of all of the fact and the information that we're learning of the impacts of this pressure, the societal pressure on the children and youth? And that, could we do the next step? Has that theme emerged? I guess that's my question. Has that theme emerged? Or has that question been asked to see if if we're gonna, the pendulum might swing to a point where students might say they don't want cell phones in schools. And that just might be a wild thought, but thinking about what we're learning about the impacts of what they're doing, has this reset offered any glimmers of more? This is my curiosity.
And that's something I think we can take that back to our principals. It is, and inquire as part of our work, especially our work. I see an opportunity when every grade 8 will be going through digital literacy training next year. I'd be very curious to get their perspective because they're coming from elementary school where it's much more rigid and kind of to a place where phones are not supposed to be in class. So it's a great inquiry. I've written it down here and we'll take that back. One theme that came out in a few student pieces that gave us a little bit of a chuckle, but also it saw a little trend is several of our students were saying that they're not seeing them used as much in class, but there's many more students using them in the bathroom or leaving class. So, we built in a layer of etiquette now, but appropriate timing may be some future work of schools. So, yeah, those trends are fascinating. I'll take that back, take that away.
So I thank you for this. I also think that we are delusional if we think this has stopped online bullying and harassment, especially when students are able to take their phones in the bathroom at school. And quite often that's where some of those unfortunate pictures are taken and shared. And we've heard evidence of that and that one. So I think that we still have to have a lot more work to do. And the expectation is online bullying harassment. It's there, it's just maybe kind of in a different zone in that. But there's also new shopping, the school shopping carts and the new things and how that is doing. And I have to be careful what I can share, but the students were talking to us about our shipping.
Yeah.
The shipping. And Joe, can you?
Very quickly, I'm learning new terms all the time. Shipping would be if Janice and I were walking down the hall together talking and someone takes a picture of us and then people comment on, are we an item? Would we be a good item? Is the better partner? All of that, and that is going on.
And sometimes the person whose picture was taken doesn't know about it on that one there. So so that is new terms is happening and it's there. And I think we need some follow up. But I will say the one thing that's come out of this is that a couple of teenagers have gotten new jobs, and the fact that they can't have their cell phones when they're working, I think not having it at school has helped them, prepared them for that real world when they're out there at the grocery store bagging or cashiering and stuff like that. So in that case there is that need to have their cell phone, I think is doing a good thing. But I also think there's more work we need to do, especially middle school students in the bullying, in that shipping thing that when I heard that, because you're right, there's so much happening, and I think we as adults need to learn that, and we cannot be complacent to say that this has stopped the bullying. It's probably put in a different avenue, in a different venue. We need to figure out where that next little curve is.
We had a young lady in grade 12 after we learned about shipping, who looked at all the younger students in the room and said, well, just know that when you get to grade 10, 11, and especially grade 12, it's just the younger kids that mostly do that. But she was there to really represent and defend and really support the younger students. It was kind.
I'll just share a little bit of what I've witnessed in classrooms. So grade 11s and 12s in the classroom that I'm invited into quite regularly. And I have not witnessed this in the last 10 years in high schools, where you will go in and there is before every class, please put your phones and headphones away. We're beginning now. And they all went away.
Really?
Okay, I'm just, it's happening. So, and then amazing conversations, eye contact, and what I've witnessed has been more student engagement, more openness for learning. And this is why we're doing this, to engage our students, to better support student learning. They are a massive distraction. So I'm not going to comment outside the classroom because I don't know that. But what I witnessed, and this has been in this last year since the new bylaw, right? In September. So for me as a retired educator, that is incredible to witness in a high school. There we go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Well, I know I'm thrilled to have this conversation. I think parents have hoped to have more restrictions on cell phones for quite a while, and I'm thrilled that kids are following suit somewhat easily. And to my colleague, Trustee Caton's comment, I mean, I think comparing the school experience and the job experience is quite interesting for kids in a lot of different ways. I mean, they have to put their cell phones away at work, and so why they can't put, so it makes sense they could do that at school too. Similarly, they conform to, different norms of social behavior that they seem perfectly capable of doing on the job, but then have more difficulty doing it at schools. I found myself really curious about what questions were asked. Yeah, whether there is an interest in moving away from our, we haven't made bell-to-bell a restriction at our middle and high schools, although my understanding is that Vanier has tried to, I see one of the posters here says bell-to-bell restrictions. So I'm also finding myself curious whether, if that is the case and kind of held, whether those rules are enforced at Vanier, and if they are, whether there are different results coming out of that school, like if kids really are behind that. And thinking back to, a book that's been in the news and on the bestseller list for a couple of years now, Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation. Certainly one of the things he really advocates for is full bell-to-bell restrictions rather than just during the classroom time, because part of what our kids are needing to relearn is that socializing, not just in class, but also during their social time over lunch and everything else. And I think I heard in one of the schools, and it might have been a middle school, but that there is a general restriction on bringing phones to the washroom. If you leave the classroom, you're not leaving with your phone during class time. So, that might also be an area to reflect back on and talk to principals about.
Seeing pockets in different places emerge. It'll be interesting to monitor that.
Yeah. So I'd be very curious about the questions that were asked of students and principals, and also I think in future when we're seeking feedback, it would be interesting to hear whether parents are seeing any difference in their kids' use at home or comments about how they're finding the school experience. But yeah, thank you for the update. I really appreciated it.
And just to let you know and let everyone know, force basic questions. Everyone's surveyed out these days. It's really difficult to get people to complete surveys. But questions, I jotted them down before I came in. Like, what strategies are being used to support personal digital device restrictions? What issues has the new personal device restrictions not been able to address? How can we support each other in the continued implementation of the digital device piece. And do you have any resources, strategies that are being used in your school that are working or not working? And that's exactly connecting to your comment, what we're trying to drill into, what pockets are working or not working. So next year, we can continue to redefine. So, and I'm not sure about Vanier for the Bell to Bell. I'm going to look into that one because I was there today, but you're right, I didn't see that many people.
Here's, yeah, digital device should be, hold on, and no cell after the bell.
Okay, so that would be,
There's bells between every block.
Yes, there is, and so I'm thinking it's block to block.
When did you guys go to high school?
Right? Yeah, like, block, no cell after the block.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Bells between every class.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Go to a high school. Kidding, it's late, we all need to laugh. That's right.
I'm doing all the talking, John. You're welcome.
I know, right?
You just get in the circle. There we go.
Fund him from the outer and come to the inner. I would like to just, I think I would say to what Shannon said, I would like the principals to be asked about what the bathroom situation, like how are we, cell phone, I think the idea of if you're allowed to the bathroom, your cell phone gets dropped to the teacher or on their desk or whatever. I think that's a fantastic thing to implement. I don't even think you'd have to ask the students. I just think maybe that's just a thing we do. I'm fascinated by this concept of shipping and somebody's picture being taken without their knowledge.
You saw me, did
you? Just don't think so, Craig. Stick, Craig.
Jennifer, there's two of mine in there too. We'll talk.
Eye contact is not consent.
For digital devices in schools, listening to the conversation, couldn't help but think about it being analogous to like streets and roads, in that like sometimes when you see that you shut down sections of city blocks, all of a sudden that allows culture to thrive and conversations to happen and safety to be highlighted, and you see humans reacting in a totally different way than they have to if there's busy traffic that's occurring. But that doesn't mean that you should necessarily like ban traffic for the entire Comox Valley, because that would not, you need ambulances. So finding ways to sort of promote places where you are essentially closing 3 city blocks for like the purpose of, shipping, or like creating opportunities for kids to socialize or conversations to happen and depth of conversation. I think that's kind of the goal. So you're not affecting your infrastructure in terms of like safety or in terms of speed or transportation or any of the things that need to happen as a result of how we now live. But you're also balancing the need for cultural bubbles here and there. And just like, I would assume that before cars, people were like, oh, cars are causing all of these problems. And it's like, okay, but we also can't take them away.
Glad I didn't have cell phones when I was in school.
Yeah, Facebook.
Or social media.
I would like to say something positive to you. I work mainly in high school, and this year I have noticed a huge difference in the engagements of the students in the classes, and their phones are put away before the teacher says, put your phone away. I have seen a noticeable difference this year. It's been super positive. It's actually been fun to go back to work in the classrooms.
Nice.
Thank you for that.
So you know it is working.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Get nervous when you don't hear things.
No, it's good. That was my experience too.
Writing notes down.
All right, well, with that, I think that I would require a motion to adjourn. Right, we've got Michelle and Chelsea. All in favor? Thank you, everyone, for staying late.